He wielded his native tongue like a whip, convinced the sheer sound of his own authority was all that mattered. But he was oblivious that for the woman cleaning his path, that very same language was a soul, a living inheritance. He judged her by the simple fabric of her uniform and made the mistake only the truly arrogant can. He underestimated the power contained in silence. This is the story of how a single word, spoken at the perfect moment, can be worth more than any fortune. It all begins in Geneva, in the lobby of the Alpine Crest Hotel, a place where luxury is so pervasive it becomes sterile. The marble floors mirrored the cold light of the Alps, and silence was an unwritten rule, upheld by guests who paid fortunes for discretion. And there, moving like a functional shadow, was Layla Haddad. Her grey uniform was camouflage against the stone walls, her movements precise, economical, almost invisible. Her job was to clean the world of others, to erase the traces they left behind. Her eyes, however, were not empty. They held an ancient stillness, an attentiveness that registered every detail of the ballet of power and wealth around her. The peace was shattered by the whisper of automatic glass doors. It was Khalid al-Sakr and his entourage. He didn't walk, he consumed space. The impeccably tailored suit, the watch that glittered like a small sun on his wrist, the loud laugh that sliced through the lobby's reverent air. To him, the world was a stage, and everyone else was either an extra or a servant. His eyes swept past Layla without seeing her, as if she were merely an extension of the wall, a piece of the furniture that ensured his comfort. He was looking for the manager, for power, for validation. He had no idea that the wealthiest person in that room wasn't the one with the most money, but the one who held a treasure he could never afford. The hotel manager materialized as if summoned, his spine bent in a practiced bow, his smile wide and professional. For Khalid, he offered the world. For Layla, he offered a sharp, sideways glance, a silent command to become even more invisible. The hierarchy was crystal clear, drawn in lines of gold and contempt. Layla knew it well. She, who had once been a professor of literature in an Aleppo that no longer existed, understood power better than any of them. The hands that now held a damp cloth once turned the pages of first-edition poets whose minds Khalid could never hope to reach. She watched the scene unfold, not with resentment, but with the cold analysis of someone who had already seen empires fall. Khalid gestured impatiently, waving away the manager's pleasantries. In that abrupt movement, the pure silk handkerchief adorning his jacket pocket floated down, landing on the floor just a few feet from Layla, a splash of vibrant color on the pale marble. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Khalid, his aides and the manager all looked at the handkerchief, and then all of them looked at Layla. Not a word was spoken, but the order was unmistakable, hanging in the heavy air of expectation. The falcon was waiting for the shadow to serve. She simply approached, retrieved the handkerchief and handed it to him. Her eyes met his for a fraction of a second. He saw nothing. She saw everything. Layla's gesture, however subservient it seemed, carried a dignity that irritated him. Perhaps it was that brief eye contact where her gaze showed none of the fear or adulation he was accustomed to. To reassert his place in the universe, as he and his entourage headed for the private elevators, Khalid felt the need for one final demonstration of power. He glanced over his shoulder, his gaze skipping past the manager and landing again on Layla, who was now polishing a glass partition a few yards away. Then, in his native Arabic, his voice loud and clear so his friends could enjoy the joke. He spoke. The sentence wasn't a mere insult. It was a philosophical statement of cruelty. "It's fascinating," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. "No matter where we travel, the natural order asserts itself. Some of us are born to own the world, and others are born only to wipe away the dust we leave behind. They don't have stories, only functions." His aides chuckled, a paid, fawning laughter. The words, spoken in the language of her parents, her poets, her lullabies, struck Layla. For an imperceptible moment, Her hand froze mid-swipe. There was no gasp, no tear, just the silent impact of being stripped of her humanity in her own mother tongue. The elevator chimed, the metal doors slid shut, and Khalid's laughter was swallowed by the architecture. The silence that returned to the lobby was now heavy, dense, as if the air itself was stained by the words he'd left behind. Layla remained motionless for another second, the cloth still in her hand. The insult echoed in her mind, not like a shout, but like a slow-acting poison, burning through her memories of the language she cherished. Every poem she had ever recited, every story she had told her students, now felt tainted by that man's arrogance. It was in this moment of vulnerability that the manager, who had understood nothing but the unwanted interaction, stalked over. His face no longer held the fawning smile, but a cold, whispered fury. "What was that?" he hissed, not waiting for an answer. "You are here to be invisible, to clean, not to interact, not to be noticed. A guest like Mr. Al-Sakr shouldn't even know you exist. One more moment of hesitation like that and you're on the street. Do you understand?" Layla didn't look up. To explain would be futile, a second humiliation. Trying to translate the offense to a man who only spoke the language of money would be like describing color to the blind. So she just nodded. A single, slow dip of her head. In that gesture was the weight of a lost homeland, a shattered career, an entire life reduced to a grey uniform and a nod of submission. She felt like the buildings of her hometown, standing on the outside, but rubble within. Alone in the middle of oppressive luxury, she was once again a ghost. Did that scene tie a knot in your stomach too? Have you ever had to swallow an injustice, to stay silent when everything inside you wanted to scream? Drop a yes in the comments if you felt the weight of that moment with Layla. Just so we know we're not alone in this feeling, but there is a truth about dignity. When it is attacked in a strong spirit, it does not break. It condenses. Layla finished her shift. Every motion of her hands, every wipe of the cloth on glass, every cart pushed down the hall, became a silent act of defiance. It was her answer to chaos, order. It was her answer to humiliation. A job well done. She left the palace of marble and gold behind and plunged into the city's real life, an anonymous face in the public transit crowd. No one on the bus that carried her home could have guessed the storm she had weathered, nor the fortress that stood behind her tired eyes. The door to her apartment opened into a different universe. The space was small, simple, furnished with second-hand pieces, but the walls told another story. They were lined not with paint, but with books. Makeshift shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, overflowing with poetry, history, and philosophy. Rumi, Al-Mutanabi, Averroes. On a small desk, a translation project was underway, words in Arabic and French coexisting in a harmony the world outside had forgotten. In a corner, a single black-and-white photo, the facade of the University of Aleppo. Here, in this sanctuary, she was not the cleaning lady. She was Professor Haddad. She did not cry. The ache was too deep for tears. Instead, she performed a ritual. She brewed mint tea, the aroma carrying her far from Geneva. She sat at her desk and opened a volume of ancient poetry. Her fingers, which had been clamped around a mop handle, now delicately traced the Arabic calligraphy. Each verse she read was another brick in the rebuilding of her soul. The words reminded her that arrogance is a veil hiding emptiness, and that wisdom is a treasure no one can steal. She didn't think about revenge. Revenge was the game of men like Khalid. She was reconnecting with her own worth, a worth that did not depend on anyone's approval. The next morning, as she put on the same grey uniform, something had shifted. Her back was straighter. Her gaze was sharper. The previous day's humiliation had been burned for fuel, and in its place was the glowing ember of an unshakable calm. She didn't know it, but the universe was about to test the strength of her new armor. The opportunity didn't arrive like a storm, but like a whisper of chance. 3 days later, in a private conference room overlooking Lake Geneva, Khalid al-Sakr was in the battle of his career. Across from him sat Swiss investors, men with grey hair and analytical eyes who were impressed not by expensive watches, but by substance and confidence. The signing of a deal that could redefine his empire hinged on this very hour. To project an image of a leader with roots and wisdom, not just an heir's fortune, Khalid decided to close his presentation with a touch of culture. He would quote Al-Mutanabbi, the greatest poet of the Arabic language. With the confident posture of a man addressing the ignorant, he recited the lines about how great visions must be met with great deeds. However, in his haste and arrogance, he stumbled. He switched a single crucial word. The verse, which should have sounded like a testament to strength, came out distorted, almost an omen of failure. His personal translator, a nervous young man, swallowed hard. Under pressure, he tried to fix it but only made it worse, delivering a confusing, meaningless phrase to the investors. The temperature in the room plummeted. The Swiss men exchanged glances. A single arched eyebrow was enough to signal the impending disaster. Khalid felt the floor vanish from beneath him, his grand finale twisting into a silent humiliation. Meanwhile, in the corner of the room, Layla was refilling the water pitchers. Moving with the required discretion, she had heard everything. She heard the original verse in her mind, the wrong word that left Khalid's lips, and the disastrous translation that followed. She understood the complete architecture of the failure. And in her heart, the unshakable calm she had cultivated for days found its purpose. She set the crystal pitcher down on a side table. The soft clink of glass on wood was the only sound in the tense silence, and it was enough to draw every eye in the room. Layla took one step forward, not with the hesitation of a servant, but with the serene authority of a master. She addressed the investors first in flawless French. "Pardon me, gentlemen." Then her eyes locked onto Khalid, and for the very first time, he truly saw her. In classical Arabic, with a purity and melody that made Khalid's dialect sound like a cheap imitation, she spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it filled every corner of the room. She recited the verse correctly. And she didn't stop there. Switching to equally perfect English so that everyone could understand, she added, "The poet teaches that ambition without wisdom builds not legacies, but gilded cages. He speaks of responsibility, not of power." The silence that followed was absolute. A deafening silence, heavier than all of Khalid's gold. The investors stared at Layla, their expressions a mixture of shock and profound respect. Khalid was pale. In an instant, in front of everyone, his empire of arrogance had been reduced to dust by a wisdom he had humiliated but could never own. Layla did not wait for thanks or apologies. She simply gave a slight nod and retreated, leaving him alone in the center of the silence he had created. It's unknown if the multi-million-dollar deal was signed that day, and in the end, it doesn't matter. The most important transaction in that room involved no money, only value. Khalid al-Sakr didn't lose a business deal. He lost the dangerous illusion that the world bent to his will. He learned the hard way that culture is not an accessory you wear to impress people, but a soul you carry within you. He tried to wear Layla's heritage as an ornament and was undone by the true owner of the treasure. Their story reminds us that we build our lives on labels, our job title, our bank account, our family name, but a person's true worth lies in what can't be seen or bought: knowledge, resilience, dignity. Layla didn't need revenge. She didn't have to shout to be heard. Her victory wasn't in tearing a powerful man down, but in simply refusing to remain invisible. She just stood up to her true height, and in doing so, the world around her silently rebalanced itself. If this story about the quiet strength of dignity moved you, your like shows us we're telling the stories that truly matter. and I'd love to know where you're watching from. Comment with the name of your city below. I read them all and make sure to reply. If you believe in the power of narratives like this, subscribe to the channel. Every subscription gives us the conviction to continue this journey. Don't go anywhere yet. Choose one of the 2 stories I've left on the screen for you to watch next. I'll see you there.